After the 5090 was released, I speculated about how the 5080, the 5070 Ti and the 5070 would all perform. Now that they're all out, let's see how close I got to predicting their real-world performance. The 5080 was the one that I was most confident about, coming to the same 71% speed versus the 5090 in two different calculations. And it turns out I was bang on, because it's exactly 71% the performance of the 5090 overall. Now, I used Voodoo 2 SLI's meta reviews over on Reddit, where all of the benchmarks for the card are compiled together and split between resolution and whether ray tracing is being used or not, and the average of all 6 of these results was indeed 71%. But the individual results varied somewhere between 64 and 78% of the speed, depending on the resolution and whether or not ray tracing was being used. But yeah, if I had to pick a single performance figure, I couldn't have done better than my 71%. My predictions for the 5070 Ti were not so accurate. On paper, the 5070 Ti looks to deliver 42% the speed of the 5090, but I thought it would outperform that, and my wibbly-wobbly calculations predicted somewhere between 55 and 61% the speed of the 5090 in practice. Now, it turns out it actually delivers between 55 and 71% the speed in practice, averaging out at 63%. So I actually underestimated the 5070 Ti's performance by a few percent. But here's the weird thing. I overestimated its performance by a few percent compared with how it fares against the 4080 card. I stated it would be almost as fast as that card was, putting it about 2% behind with my calculations, but in practice it was more like 4% behind. So somehow my estimate was behind and ahead of how it performed at the same time. So how accurate my predictions are really depends on the resolution and settings being used. I'm still quite happy with my estimate, I think it was pretty precise, but I also predicted the 5070 Ti to be the best value for money out of the whole 50 series of cards. What I didn't predict was how much their prices would inflate above MSRP in practice. So I was kind of inaccurate there as well, but I'm not going to blame myself for that. And last, there's the RTX 5070 card. Now, I expected this to be about 42 to 48% the speed of the 5090, and it averaged 46. So I got that prediction pretty spot on for 1440p results. But obviously it falls further behind the 5090 in 4K settings where the VRAM starts running out. And it pulls closer to the 5090 than my prediction states if you drop the resolution down to 1080p, where it becomes a bit more CPU limited. So I'm quite happy with my prediction of the 5070 as well. I think my analysis of how it fares versus the 4000 series is a bit more interesting though. Now, I said, according to its specs, that it wasn't that much of a leap over the 4070, and I didn't see how it could keep up with the 4070 Super in practice. But then I did point out that Nvidia's pre-release benchmarks showed it ever so slightly outperforming the 4070 Super. My calculations put it 1 to 2% ahead of that card in practice, when actually it outperforms it by 0 to 5%, I think thanks to its faster VRAM, although sometimes it does drop behind the 4070 Super in specific games. It also outperformed my expectations about its power draw. Since Nvidia stated that its TDP was 250 watts and the 4070 Super is rated at 220 watts, I thought the 5070 was going to be less power efficient than the 4070 was. And I guess it was 1% less efficient, but it's close enough to be a draw, so I kind of got that wrong as well. It certainly wasn't 30 watts difference in practice. In conclusion, using the base specs, a few simple calculations, what limited information Nvidia provided to us pre-release, and a tiny bit of common sense, I was off by 1 or 2% at most, and honestly I'm quite happy with that. I was still as accurate as any other source's calculations or claimed leaks or rumours were. And that's pretty much my goal. I wanted to show that you don't need to give clickbaiters attention, because using the given performance metrics that you've already got, you can do a pretty good job yourself of predicting how these cards will perform. Or just let me do it for you. Smash that subscribe button.